Welcome back to Dragonfall. We were just about to start talking to Glory about her history. And as she says, this is a long story, Alice. Long and ugly and cruel. Are you sure that you want to hear this? Please. Alright, I'm going to start at the beginning. Not for you, for me. I guess that it might help me to say all of this out loud. She takes a deep breath, then slowly releases it. When she speaks, her voice comes out in a cool monotone. My family lived in Stuttgart. It was a nice enough place, I suppose. My parents worked as wage slaves for IFMU. My mom was a good person. Once upon a time, my father was a decent person as well. That's what Mom always told me. But I never knew him that way. She pauses for a long moment. When she begins speaking again, some of the ice has fallen away from her voice. For the first time since you met her, Glory sounds alive. The dad that I knew was an old, damaged Euro War vet who turned to hardline religion to make sense of the world. In Stuttgart, that meant either Ritter Christi or their fascist cousins, the Kreuzritters. My father chose the latter path. I still remember hiding in my room when my father had his Kreuzritter brothers over for prayer group. They would drink and get rowdy, and then spend an hour or two riling themselves up with talk about heretics and the devil's work. Then they'd go find some poor elf or dwarf, stomp the living shit out of him, and drown him in the Neckar. Meanwhile, I'd be holed up at home with Mom, who would commemorate the event by drinking a bottle of wine and crying herself to sleep. Just elves and dwarves? I'd assume that a mage or an orc would make a more tempting target. What, you mean pick a victim who could fight back? Glory shakes her head. No, my father and his pack of jackals weren't up for that kind of trouble. They'd had more than enough of real combat when they were young men, back in the Euro Wars. They just wanted to feel big and in control of their lives again, and it didn't matter to them who they hurt in the process. Anyway, aside from the fact that my dad and his buddies were a bunch of murderous assholes, life was pretty normal. I went to school, made friends, hung out with my mom. Kid stuff. Then I turned 14 and everything went to shit. Glory pauses, then swallows hard. Ever so slightly, her cheeks flush red. Suddenly she looks self-conscious, as if she's snapped out of a trance. As quickly as it came, the flush of emotion disappears. Her voice frosts over. I don't want to talk about this anymore. This one's shitty. Airing this stuff out is clearly helping you to work through it. Yes, it is. Glory stares at you through cold, dead eyes. But I'm not going to be able to get through this in one sitting. You need to understand that. She turns away from you, her movements mechanical. Now, let's get back to the job at hand, shall we? Alright. That's an interesting start. I mean, it does certainly flesh out both Glory and the world a bit more, which I appreciate. Although I suspect it's going to be hard to listen to some of it. Anyway. Nothing on the computer. Let's see. Okay, so I probably need to pick up... well, I've got points to spend, but we'll do that later. Probably need to pick up at least one more advanced med kit. Or I could spec into Arcane to get some healing, but I don't really want to spread myself that thin. So... Okay. Let's talk to the team and see what we've got. Amsel's expression is harder than you've seen it before. When he speaks, his voice is grim. Iger has told me of Green Winter's death. She said that he died in the same manner that Monica did. This seems petty. Why do I even have these options? It wasn't a pretty sight. Amsel nods gravely. I know that you and Iger have had your differences. I will tell you that she was badly shaken by the sight of Winter's body. She also mentioned that you found something in Winter's safe. A package of very old discs. May I see them? Of course. Good God. Gingerly, Amsel lifts a disc from the bundle and holds it up to the light. Slowly, he begins to turn it in his hand, causing rainbow patterns to shimmer across its surface. I haven't seen one of these since I was a boy. This is a DVD-RW, a data storage medium from the mid-2000s. I'm amazed that Winters was able to find a device that could play it. Do you know how we can read these things? He puts down the DVD in his hands and quickly inspects the others. The first disc that I looked at might be readable. The others are damaged, some severely so. I have my doubts about them. For now, let's concentrate on the undamaged disc. There's a little shop outside, the Data Haven. Talk to the proprietor, Mallet Holier. She may be able to help. Tell her to put the cost of the device on my account. Why do I have these options? Why would I ever be that asshole? Unless there's a reason to be, and like you won't find out until you've gone through the game once, but that seems unlikely. Hopefully unlikely. I'm on it. Sure, whatever. Let's grab it. It's interesting that this is a persistent message. Welcome back. What can I do for you? I'm looking for something that can play back a DVD-RW. Really? That is old tech. Very old, in fact. Just a moment. I'll go look. She turns to rummage through a bin of obsolete components in the back of her stall. Ah, yes. Here we are. The dwarf wrestles a mid-sized flat-screen display out of the bin. This display has enough hookups to connect a DVD player. RCA, you know, vintage. The player itself, though, this I do not have. You may wish to try your luck down at the junkyard. There's a scavenger there, a primitive man with a crude disposition. If anyone here in the Kriz Bazaar can help you find your DVD player, he can. But he will almost certainly attempt to overcharge you for it. She takes a deep breath and smiles up at you. But you are not here for gossip. Shall we conclude our business? I could give you the display for, say, 200 nuyen? Paul Amsel said to charge it to his account. Ah, very well. I will have it packaged up and delivered to Herr Amsel straight away. Best of luck finding your DVD reader. I wish you well. It does seem weird that, like, obviously it's hard in current times to think about the future of technology and what will and won't be usable at the time. Obviously, even now, like in 2021, it is difficult to find a way to anything with an RCA output in particular like old game consoles, is hard to find a hookup for. Even adapters systems, you know, whether it's like standalone boxes or USB pass-throughs or whatever, like people make those products, but they're relatively niche. Capture cards largely don't support those things. And that's only that's technology that was standard, what? Still pretty standard 10 years ago, completely standard 15 and 20 years ago. And so for the hookups to die at such a time, that's fascinating. However, in this particular case, because it's a DVD, there's no reason they can't have like an external drive with a computer hookup instead of a TV, which is a bit of a different thing, right? There's no reason the DVD has to be read by a TV directly, although I'm sure it's for narrative reasons they're doing it that way. But it is interesting to think about, like, if I had to buy a DVD player and make it readable in 50 years from now, which is well, no, actually, this is like 30 years from now. It's like 31 years, 33 years. I think this is 2054. Like, that seems close enough that the idea of still having physical discs are certainly not gone now. And DVDs are not gone. They're still being manufactured, although less and less. So the idea of at least having a device that is then capable of being read by something else, you know, whether it's you need to find old drivers to make the device work or something like that. That still seems like it should be theoretically not incredibly hard in 2054. And it's hard to like also balance out like the technology considerations of like if you want to read floppy disks or zip disks or any of the other weirder, slightly more proprietary, slightly older systems, like those are almost impossible unless you already have the hardware with you and have drivers that work on modern systems. But those are also specifically data storage technologies that were pretty antiquated or pretty like narrow in their uses. Like floppy drives basically only were on computers versus, you know, CDs, DVDs, Blu-ray discs, which are still being made, so on and so forth, which have been in use for 40 years, basically nonstop, some version of the technology. So I don't know. It's all apples and oranges. A little hard to suss out, but I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one who cares or thinks about those things. But I have to deal with old technology and continued support on a frequent basis, so. A stout old man looks up from whatever old tech he's tinkering with to squint at you through the thick, old-fashioned glasses. He pushes them up with an oil-stained finger as he straightens up to nod at you. He speaks with a gruff but well-meaning tone, heavily accented with German tonality. Guten Tag. What can I do for you? Mallet tells me you're the man to speak to about DVDs. That little shrew sent you my way, huh? Shroddy's smile broadens. Will wonders never cease? Well, introductions are in order, I suppose. Shroddy Brookman, at your service. The old man rises grimly. I can't fucking read. The old man raises a grimy hand in salute. Need something salvaged? Some old components? Violet? I have no idea how to pronounce that. Violet? Hold on. I'm going to look that one up. Perhaps. Okay. Yeah, we already talked about this. I don't need to reiterate too much. Just Throwing in German words that I don't know the definition of is a little rough. Wonderful. How about that DVD player? Well, let's see. I think I've got something that'll work for you. Shreddy rummages through the junk heaped on the table behind him. A few seconds later, he snatches a battered plastic lozenge shape from the pile. Ah, here we go. An old Korean player that I dug up last week. 2010 model. A real beauty. Shreddy's smile broadens, then he gives you a conspiratorial wink. I fixed her up and got her running. Without any discs to read, I've mostly been using her as a paperweight. Sounds like what I'm looking for. How much do you want for it? Shreddy glances back at the DVD player, a rueful expression on his face. Well, I admit, I'm a little loath to part with her. There are plenty of folks out here who'd really appreciate an older player such as this, and I don't know what your intentions are for it. I suppose, given the time and trouble I took in putting her back together, that I'd be willing to part with her for, say... Shreddy's eyes dart over your gear, a calculated expression on his face. About 500 nuyen? I'm short on cash right now. Could I offer you something in trade? The old man pauses for a moment, considering. I tell you what. A few months ago I had, well, let's call it a difference of opinion with that Bragazi fellow from the Soykaf shop. He hasn't let me into his establishment since, and I'd sell my mother for a decent cup of coffee. You get me a cup of Turkish coffee, the real stuff, not that fake junk, and I'll give you the DVD player. Sound like a deal? Hand him your coffee. As it happens, I have a mug right here, which I've been carrying around for at least a day, I think. Ah, thank you. Shreddy gratefully accepts the coffee, then snaps the lid back and inhales deeply, wiggling his mustache as he processes the scent. Yep, that's the real stuff, all right. Shreddy gingerly picks up the ancient device from the table and presses it into your hands. The plastic is scuffed and worn, and it rattles a bit when you move it. Give her some good use, okay? Well, yeah, that's probably the person I'll be in 2054. That's just a picture of me. So, anyway. Why do we not have a marker? Why? That's weird. There's just no... Well, I mean, I know what it means, but there's no yellow marker here, so... All right. Oh, let's see. It seems that Amsel has assembled the team in your absence. They stand in a group around the old display that you had Mallet deliver. On their faces you can see excitement and apprehension, curiosity and dread. Hi Alice, have you procured a DVD reader? Hand Amsel the DVD player. I have, it's right here. Good, this should only take a moment. This should only take me a moment. Amsel disappears behind the ancient display. After a few minutes of fiddling with its battered inputs, he reappears, a satisfied look on his face. Everything appears to be functional. The disc should be ready to play. Well, don't keep us in suspense. Start the damn thing already. Alice went to the trouble of fetching everything. Let her do the honors. Amsel steps back, clearing a path for you to access the ancient machine.